Welcome everybody to the first virtual book fair UK. Now we are going to present from United States Rebecca Bowman with her presentation Unfinished Business, Lugar de Aguas, The Divided World of Rebecca Bowman. El mundo dividido de Rebecca, accompanied by the presenter Libertad Betancourt. Thank you so much. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for the support. And thank you so much for our co-founders, Cesar Salvatierra, Alan Morales. They are great guys. I love them because they opened an important forum, an important scenario for many writers, poets, artists. Thank you so much, United Kingdom, because you are opening your house, your homes, your people. You are sharing with us your art, your culture. And today we are good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending in which part of the world you are. We are in Texas. I'm in Houston, Texas. And my guest, the excellent, the great writer Rebecca Bowman. She is from United States, but she speaks Spanish better than me. She's a great person. I'm so happy. Thank you for being here, Rebecca. And this space is for you. I'm going to talk a little more about you, but first of all, I would like that you say hi for everybody that for the people that they are watching us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm so grateful to get to speak with you and to also get a chance to talk a little bit to people in the United Kingdom and other places all over. And I just really appreciate what you've been doing, Libertad, all over for the many, many months. I don't know if it's a year now, but it's or more, but it's just wonderful what you're doing for spreading all the word about other people's creative processes and things. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. And it's wonderful because Rebecca is bilingual, and you are going to have the opportunity to know his work in Spanish and in English. UK, don't go, stay here, or any country that they speak English. You can be here, and the same for people in Spanish. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todo nuestro público en español. Tenemos hoy a la escritora Rebecca Bowman, que nos estará compartiendo su material. Va a ser en los dos idiomas, así es que no se vayan, quédense aquí, no se lo pueden perder, inglés y español. Okay, I'm going to read a little your short biography because your biography is long, but I'm going to read it just a little, and in Spanish and in English. Rebecca Bowman was born in Los Angeles, but lived for many years in Mexico. She has won grants from Conacultura and the State Council of the Arts and Culture of Tamaulipas and was awarded by the, the Juan B. Tijerina State Prize for Short Story, the State Prize for Short Story ISTE, and the Manuel Acuña International Playwriting Prize. Her books include Los Ciclos Íntimos, La Vida Paralela, Horas de Visita, Unfinished Business and Other Stories, and Portentos de Otros Años. She co-created Ink Reaction, Reacciones en Tinta with Veronique Bang. Her short stories, sorry, but the letter is really small for me, and poetry have been anthologized and her plays have been staged many times. A new collection of short stories, Lugar de Aguas, will be published by Flower Song Press this summer. Ok, ahora vamos a leerlo en español. Rebecca Bowman nació en Los Ángeles, radicó muchos años en la ciudad de Victoria, Tamaulipas, México. Fue becaria de Conacultura, del Consejo Estatal para la Cultura y las Artes de Tamaulipas y obtuvo el Premio Estatal Juan B. Tijerina en Cuento, el Premio Estatal de Cuento de ISTE y el Premio Internacional de Dramaturgia Manuel Acuña. Ha publicado varios libros, incluyendo Los Ciclos Íntimos, La Vida Paralela, Hora de Visita, Unfinished I'm crazy, Business and Other Stories y Portentos de Otros Años. Sus cuentos y poesía se han incluido en antologías y sus obras de teatro se han puesto en escena varias veces. Wow, Rebeca, ya no quiero hablar más. Este espacio es tuyo. Bienvenida. Estamos felices y gozosos de escuchar tu material. ¿Qué nos vas a compartir hoy? Cuéntanos.
Muchísimas gracias. También quiero hablar un poco en español y dar también las gracias por estar aquí, bueno, a través de las líneas en Inglaterra. Y pues estoy muy contenta. Yo puse el título de El mundo dividido porque soy como una escritora que escribe en 2 idiomas y según el idioma en que esté escribiendo, cambio casi de personalidad, de estilo, de contexto. A lo mejor hay algo similar, no sé, pero yo siento que mis cuentos que están en español no pueden traducirse muy bien al inglés y al igual, mis cuentos en inglés no se traducen bien al español. Claro que lo puedo hacer, pero se pierde tanto de lo que está allí, porque como viví muchos años en México, siento que entiendo el contexto cultural de México y mis cuentos en español tienen que ver con ese contexto y ahora en esta nueva colección de Lugar de Aguas estoy viendo cómo viven los hispanoparlantes que viven en Estados Unidos. En Texas. Entonces, esta colección no es tanto sobre México, sino sobre la vida en Estados Unidos, pero para los hispanoparlantes. Y muchas veces no tienen voz todavía, los que hablan español todavía, porque son inmigrantes recientes y todavía no están escribiendo o publicando. Entonces, estoy tratando de captar un poquito cuáles son sus situaciones y pensar en ellos un poco. Como yo fui también un poco como un inmigrante por vivir casi 17 años en México y regresar a Estados Unidos y mi esposo y mis hijos son de México, pues siento que sí compartí un poquito de esa vida y a la vez no soy exactamente como ellos porque nací en Estados Unidos. Entonces tengo una perspectiva diferente, pero sí estoy tratando de captar cómo es ser un inmigrante reciente que hable español y que esté viviendo en Texas, en Estados Unidos, en una colección. Y la otra colección de la que quiero hablar es completamente al contrario. Estoy escribiendo en inglés y pensando en mi vida de cuando yo era niña, en los años 60, 70, todo lo que hubo. Y se llama Unfinished Business. Now, I'm sorry, I've been speaking Spanish and I didn't do any English. Unfinished business because I'm talking about those little things that you're left with that just didn't get completely finished in your life. So you kind of have this feeling about, well, what happened there? What happened there? And you're left with that and you don't resolve it. So it's good to go back and, while these are not autobiographical, I'm thinking about those feelings I felt in different times, or also what I observed in other people at other times that I don't think ever got completely resolved in me. So perhaps I'll see someone else's situation and wonder, well, whatever happened to that person? And then I go from there. It's all imagination after that. But it's about that looking back from your perspective now, back into a time that was earlier and trying to resolve things. And I think that's so important to do. And maybe the stories that I'm telling will help other people think about their unfinished business and think about their perspectives or how little nuances in the ways we interact with each other, the way we grow, all of that. So, entonces and I'm speaking English because I'm talking about, you see how I'm so divided and it's hard to talk about one than the other. But
Yeah.
quickly in English, my stories in Spanish are the ones that I'm going to talk about. This new collection is about people who speak Spanish in Texas and live in Texas. So I'm looking at, rather than looking at people who live in Mexico and their lives, I've been looking at little glimpses of what I've seen in my town, which in San Marcos has a river in it and has a lot of watery areas. So it's called Lugar de Aguas because of that. But it's all about little glimpses. I would see a little glimpse of something and I'd say, well, what is that? What's happening there? And just with that little glimpse, for example, in one story, one time I saw a boy walking about 15 and following that boy was somebody who looked as if they had autism or something like that. I thought, well, what's happening there? Just that little glimpse. And from that, a story arose. Or I'd see one glimpse of an interaction between a father and a son. And from that, another story would arise. So from these things. And so Lugar de Aguas is about trying to give a glimpse of my hometown, but from the perspective of people who speak Spanish. And then Unfinished Business is looking back almost at Texas, but also because I was born in California, different aspects of small town life, both of them. So very different. It's kind of fun to write in two languages because you get to, there's almost a contrast there. And I don't know if it'd be good. What I thought was I'd read some things. Tengo ganas de leer un cuento en inglés, luego otro en español, otro en inglés, so that somebody's not waiting a long time if they only speak one language. But also, so maybe you can compare, those of you who do speak both languages, and see the differences. Yeah, wow. It's really interesting to see how one's own mind changes. And I think most of us who speak two languages, la mayor parte de nosotros que hablemos dos idiomas, que hablamos dos idiomas, sentimos que tenemos dos personalidades muy diferentes, ¿verdad? Muy distintas según el idioma. El idioma también rige cómo somos. Y eso también pasa en la literatura, también. Entonces, mis propias perspectivas, la manera en que juzgo a las personas, en ciertas maneras, soy más juzgona en español, en otras maneras soy más juzgona en inglés, no sé, otras veces entiendo, soy más suave en un idioma, en el otro soy un poco más cruel, creo. Entonces, a ver si ven en cuál soy cada cosa, ¿verdad? ¿Cuál cultura será más cruel? No sé, o sea, la verdad, y también cuál cultura tiene como cosas muy amorosas. Yo estoy enamoradísima de México y enamoradísima de toda la cultura latina, me fascina y siento que no soy norteamericana únicamente, pero sí siento que he absorbido mucho la cultura latina. Pero sí, es interesante ver.
Fíjate que te quisiera decir algo muy rápido antes de que empieces a leer. Yo he leído tu material, ¿ok? Y yo recuerdo una historia, I remember one story, and when I read it, I felt it was a Mexican who wrote it, because it was exactly what I lived. It has a connection with my past. Cuando yo lo leí, sentí que lo había escrito en español, una persona mexicana, porque tenía esa conexión. And I think that you have two hearts. You don't have one. You have two. Tienes dos corazones, or maybe they are twins, a heart twins, ¿no? Que es mexicana y americana, porque tú piensas y vives como mexicana. You think and you write like Mexican. Okay, I don't want to take more time. Go ahead.
I did live, I raised my children in Mexico. I got married in Mexico. I lived 17 years, at least 17 years in Mexico. So at one point it was more time in Mexico than I had been in the United States. And so I really did try to assimilate as much as possible. And so I would just absorb everything that I could. So that I do believe that. I feel that way. And I hate to be appropriating. I'm not appropriating. It's just simply some people are transnational. Some people have experiences that let them be in between, or in this case, kind of divided or something. So here I'm also having the odd thing of writing in Spanish, but in the United States, in the one collection in Spanish. So that's like another part of me that's grown since I moved to Texas in 2000. Before I would not have, and even here I'm kind of being very tentative about it because I'm not used to writing about people who speak in Spanish in the United States. So, we'll see if people like it or if they don't like it. So far, I've had good response I read this for some students that were Spanish speakers that grew up here, and they were very happy. They didn't say, oh, this is a problem or anything. So we'll see. I guess I can go ahead and start reading a short story. And I'll read the first one I'm going to read. So we're talking about cruelty. This is called Mean Streak. Okay. And so this is thinking a little bit about the 1970s. So Mean Streak. We mess around on the outskirts of town most days, walk through the woods behind the cemetery, pick a spot and sit there. Not much to do in this old town, not much to see. John would kick a root out of the ground, upset a few mushrooms, their undersides black and velvety and mysterious. He'd find a stump and sit there, which meant we didn't have a good place to sit ourselves, but we'd never complain. That's the way it is. The most selfish person is the dominant one. Carlos would squat on his heels. He had a way of doing this and made sure he didn't dirty those black tooled boots of his. That guy was always dressed impeccably, creased blue jeans, a cowboy shirt. He could walk through a swamp and come out as clean as he came in. Austin would plop down just anywhere. He was easygoing and cheerful and dumb as all get out. Me, I was my usual self, quiet, on the fringe, wondering why I hung around these guys in the first place. You'd have to hang around with someone, I guess. We didn't really talk much. We'd wander about, kick things, throw a few rocks, burst out running together through the trees and slow down. It was a good feeling mostly, like a herd of deer or a pack of young wolves. It was just once in a while I'd feel odd. We never met unless we were 3 or 4 of us, never went to each other's houses. We'd just meet out in the woods. Once in a while, we'd do the river. John had enough tubes. We'd start out at Grover's Point and end up down at Kurt's Roadhouse, where we could call John's mom and she'd pick us up. We'd float down in those tubes, our heads slung back, bodies in the cool green water, barely talking, staring up at the trees. That was a good thing. John's mom would pull up in that red pickup of hers, the one with the dusty sides, her thin self in the front under a cowboy hat, her blue snaky eyes squinting, her hair drawn back. We'd drop the tubes into the back, then haul ourselves back there and sit on them for the ride home. She'd drop Austin and me off a block from our houses and Carlos out near the center of town. She didn't feel it was necessary to take us to our homes, and we didn't especially want her to do that. It was like she knew this was something separate. John usually decided what to do, and we all would just go along. There was a mean streak in him. That's what I think. A mean streak and a need to do something dangerous. I don't know if the others had it. I don't think so. Left on their lonesome, they'd probably never have joined in. And why they'd bother with that girl in particular, I don't know. Perhaps because underneath it all, she was kind of beautiful. Milky white skin she had, and black hair that fell into ringlets, a puffiness to her body that wasn't attractive when she was younger, but got so when she reached 14. Her lashes were long and her mouth was somehow pointy and red, with the flesh in the middle poking out. If she weren't raised by her grandmother, she would have been fine. She would have been normal. It was just her clothes, these strange purple pants and the Mary Janes and her owlish glasses, and the fact that in grade school she always brought tuna sandwiches. It was just that she was softer than the rest. So she was an easy target, and she smelled different. She had a different smell to her. She was different enough that we didn't think she felt anything, quite enough so we didn't think she thought anything. Someone you could throw a rock at and nothing would happen, that you could pinch and no sound would be heard. It wasn't just us, it was the girls too. They were meaner actually. Us, we didn't care that much about girls. At some point, picking on her just seemed too mean, so the girls stopped doing it, and Ginger became someone it was normal to ignore. In fact, if you addressed her, people around you would stop and listen. But now that she turned 14, she caught John's attention. That's what I think. John had long, dirty blonde hair and a nose that stuck out like a surfboard, high cheekbones and blue eyes that slanted a bit. He wasn't big. He was almost short, but his body was lean and wiry, so you didn't notice unless he stood next to someone. He had a way of walking that made you feel his muscles springing out. I guess he was athletic, but he didn't do sports. He just hung out in the woods with all of us. Maybe she didn't catch his attention. Maybe he wouldn't have done anything if she hadn't been out there, if it hadn't been hot, if we weren't so fucking bored. It was a muggy afternoon in that part of the summer where you couldn't remember what day of week it was. It was around 4 o'clock before you need to head home, but with a long portion of the day still to kill. It had rained the day before, and the paths were mudded up. Our steps were uncertain. We had found a bike trail and walked it. We'd uncovered the carcass of a dead deer and run away from the stink. The mosquitoes weren't out yet, and you could hear the sky thickening with clouds up above us. It wasn't to the point where it would rain yet, though some people might guess it would. We were sitting around near that stump John liked, Carlos squatting on the heels of his boots, me holding a stick like a spear and pushing it into an anthill, trying to stir up trouble, when we heard a twig snapping behind us. John was the first one up. His muscles tensed, and he said, "Well, looky here." So I turned and saw a black head of hair amidst the green. What she was doing there, I don't know. It didn't make sense as she wasn't dressed like you do when you go out for a walk. She was wearing a thin magenta dress and a pair of black rain boots. She was hugging a bunch of books to her chest. The skin above the rain boots was white and dimpled and kind of dead. "Hey, Ginger," I started to call out, but John gestured for me to shut up. In the voice of a hunter, he said, "You, Carlos, you head around to her right. You, Austin, get behind her. Manny, you stand over there." We did. We weren't thinking. We weren't wondering what he was going to do. We were in that automatic mode, like when you're running and your mind goes blank. "Hoo-hoo," John called, like a mourning dove. "Hoo-hoo." By then she had seen us, or seen John, because we were gone by then, surrounding her from all sides, but a ways away so she couldn't see us. She hugged her books closer to her chest. She slumped a bit, then pushed her eyeglasses up, her tummy puffed out. Hoo-hoo, Carlos called back. Hoo-hoo, Austin hollered, and then I answered back too. John walked closer to her. His hair flipped back. You got $1, Ginger? You got $1 you can give me? Of course she didn't. She had her books and nothing else. No, she said in that soft, high voice of hers. I don't have $1. I'm thirsty. I need a soda. I don't have any money. Well, what can you give me, Ginger? She started to move off, but John blocked her path. It was still muggy, and I could feel a trail of sweat start down under my arm. Surely there's something you can give me. Ginger stood perfectly still. She didn't say anything. This had worked for her in the past. She would stand perfectly still. She wouldn't move, and eventually her torturers would get bored and head off. But John wasn't done with her. Come on, Ginger, you can think of something. There was a smell of wet earth all about us, and real mourning doves were calling to each other from tree to tree. Woohoo! Woohoo! A branch cracked way back in the woods. It might have been a deer. Carlos threw a rock at the squirrel. Come on, John, let's go. And Austin said, hey, I got to get back for dinner, which was an obvious lie. It was too early for dinner. John remained in the same stance, his feet wide apart, his weight on the balls of his feet, his muscles tensed. I didn't say anything. The sweat drop under my arm had detained itself for a while. Now it continued on down its path. Ginger twisted slightly, her eyes down. She looked ready to bolt. I said, let's go, John. Let's get the fuck out of here. Carlos' voice was strong. It was dominant. John turned his body away from Ginger, but his face kept staring at her, first at her mouth, and then it slid down towards that dead bit of skin on her leg. We all went home, but nobody talked. I found something to do that summer that kept me out of those woods. I don't know about the others. Years later, I would wonder what happened to Ginger. You can't find her name on the internet. I really don't know. Entonces, ese es un ejemplo de una historia de unfinished business, because you don't really know what happened to the girl. It's that feeling. And I'm thinking there a lot about the remembering the feelings that adolescents have when they're kind of like running in packs and they're doing things that there's a certain behavior that's maybe not the best behavior. So I was just thinking about that mostly when I was doing that. I don't know, I'm thinking I'm going to read a story in Spanish now and see how this changes a little bit. You can feel that it's a kind of a mean story in a way. Not all these stories in unfinished business are mean, but that one is in a way. And then this one's called, and I'm going to change languages, and we'll see if you see even the change in the way I talk. I don't know, but lo posible. Sobre la mesa verde de la cocina, mi abuela va limpiando frijol. Con su dedo índice, reparte los frijolitos en 2 pilas, apartando las piedritas y los frijoles engustonados de los buenos. Con suma paciencia hace su labor y a la vez canta con la radio puesta en Radio Sol KSSJ, música nostálgica. La veo y me da gusto. Pronto la casa se llenará del buen olor a frijoles. Habrá un vapor que calienta la cocina y me envuelve. Pronto habrá algo que comer. Cuando vivía mi abuelo, ella le hacía sopa de frijol. En un plato hondo le agregaba arroz y cuidadosamente y sin enfadarse, acercaba la cuchara llena de caldo a la boca ávida de mi abuelo, aunque de ahí se le cayera ensuciando su mentón. Lo había envuelto en un trapo de cocina que también le servía de servilleta. El hambre de mi abuelo era insaciable, pero mi abuela no le podía dar mucho, porque tenía que poderlo levantar si se caía. Se le sentaba y le daba de comer, ritual diario de constancia y cariño. Pero ahora llego de la escuela y tengo que ver si se acordó mi abuela de ir a la tienda, si al regresar de la tienda se puso a cocinar. A veces hay sopa de fideo o picadillo hecho, tortillas en la mesa, pero no puedo contar con ello. Ni a quién decir ni quiero que sepan. Total, yo me valgo por mí mismo. Soy lo suficientemente grande. Las baldosas del patio resplandecen. San Judas Tadeo me mira, santo de lo imposible, de las causas perdidas. Quisiera prenderle su vela, pero no hay que gastar su luz. En la escuela por la mañana nos dan jugo de naranja, un cartón cuadrado de leche, un bisquete y una salchicha. Aunque los otros refunfuñen, me sabe todo a gloria. Algunas migas del bisquete quedan entre mis dientes y los vuelvo a saborear mientras decimos el pledge. Cuando mi abuelo vivía, mi abuela sacaba el trapito con el que protegía la camisa de mi abuelo mientras le daba de comer y lo sacudía en el jardín. Las moronas se esparcían sobre el concreto y muy pronto llegaban los pájaros a recogerlas. Luego le prendía la radio y le buscaba el partido de fútbol. La casa de mi abuela es blanca, de concreto, acurrucada entre las otras casas de madera pintadas de color. Mientras en las otras casas los pisos chirrían cuando uno camina de un cuarto a otro, con nosotros, con nuestro piso azulejado, apenas se notan nuestros movimientos. Mi abuela en sus pantuflas hace plap, plap, plap sobre las baldosas y hay un susurro al cambiar de rumbo, un sonido de shh, pero los pasos no chillan como con el piso de madera. Y qué bueno porque así no la despierto cuando llego de la escuela, ni ella me molesta cuando por el insomnio trasnocha. Vivimos tranquilos los dos, estamos acostumbrados. Sé aguantar, eso me enseñaron. Mi abuelo aguantó 6, 7 años de sentarse en aquella silla, de moverse apenas, y mi abuela ni hablar, que es un poco de hambre. Las señoras de la cafetería son bien malas. No dejan que compartamos nada, ni que llevemos lo que sobra. Si hablamos de más, no nos dan el viernes cuando podemos sentarnos donde sea. Una me miró una vez y dijo, "Don't gobble your food", y desde entonces me achivé un poco a la hora de comer. Allí van los paquetes de plástico llenos de comida perfectamente buena, una vez más al basurero, pero ya no quiero que me digan nada. En la recámara de mi abuela la cocha está extendida. Ella canturrea mientras sacude la cómoda. Canta una de las suyas, un bolero de los de antes. Escucho el susurro de sus pantuflas y luego el plap, plap, plap. En el aire se siente el vapor de los frijoles que no tardarán en estar listos. Pronto habrá algo que comer. San Judas Tadeo me sigue mirando. Es el santo de lo imposible, pero lo mío es posible, pues yo sé aguantar. This is a story in Spanish then, and I don't know if you see the difference. It's a very, there's a lot of hidden hunger. There's a lot of hidden hunger in the United States where everything looks like it's fine, but you find out that it isn't, that there's a lot of houses where people aren't getting enough to eat. And so it's good to talk about that, at least in the story here. And
that story is like who write it is a real Mexican because all the details, like you touched something in my heart that project me to in Mexico. I felt in Mexico, and I was remembering my life. No, my grandma selecting the beans and all the details. Bueno, me hiciste pensar en mi infancia, en esa abuela que contaba los frijoles y realmente la persona que escribió este cuento es una persona mexicana. O sea, tú tienes un corazón mexicano, solamente lo puede hacer un corazón mexicano y yo te felicito. Congratulations, Rebecca. I can't believe it that the time passed really quickly. Ya se nos pasó el tiempo.
Ay, perdón.
No, no, estamos fabulosos. De verdad, es que es un deleite. Te agradezco infinitamente que hayas podido compartir en tus dos idiomas. Thank you for sharing in 2 languages. Ellos tuvieron la oportunidad, everybody had the opportunity to know your work, to your books, and your talent. De veras que gracias por habernos permitido a todos de compartir ese talento que tú tienes. Te agradezco infinitamente el que hayas estado.
Muchísimas gracias, Libertad. De veras, y muchos saludos a todos. Qué bien que estén siguiendo lo de la feria y que estén aumentando cada vez más. Pero muchísimas gracias, Libertad, de veras.
Gracias a ti, fue un deleite, de verdad. Estos son nuestros talentos aquí. We have talent in United States. We have great writers, poets, artists. De veras, muchas gracias por ese talento tan maravilloso. Eres un orgullo para nosotros. Gracias, Rebecca. Thank you so much, United Kingdom and all around the world for follow the fair. Don't go. We have a long agenda today. Thank you so much. Kisses. Thank you. Thank you, Maria.